I remember Steve Note was there. We kind of invited some of the guys from Medford and some other people that we knew to come do this bon voyage thing because the ship was leaving. It seemed like we were supposed to leave at about 11 o'clock at night. And I'm sure the ship must have pulled in probably around January 1st. Cause to bring all, and then they would spend 3 days there for the Australians to run around, Pearl Harbor or Waikiki Beach, or just kind of see Hawaii. And so, that we realized this was a pretty big deal for these Australians because they were going to be gone close to a month, going round trip on this ship. I think we were 17 days going one way, so there were probably at least 17 coming up, and maybe a couple days in Hawaii. So we got on the boat, and they kind of had our sleeping arrangements messed up. We thought, of course, we bought the cheapest tickets they had. I think that $391. And we thought we were going to be in a room with 4 other guys, so there'd be like 6 people in a room, And so it turned out that I got a room that was a private room with its own bathroom. Okay, and it was an older ship. It was probably built in the 50s, so it wasn't like these modern. It was really clean and they'd taken good care of it, but it was older. And so Bill got in with us. He had and Bill got in a separate room with one other guy. And so we, after about a day, we went and saw some guy and said, hey, we were kind of traveling together, so we're wondering if we could be in the same room. Could you move Bill into my room? And so, of course, that got them on to that, they'd put me in the wrong room. I had a lot nicer room than what we paid for, with its own bathroom, because most of the rooms had a bathroom like down the hall on the ship. And so we ended up getting in the same room, with a bathroom down the hall, and so it was just like a bunk bed room, pretty small. Did have a sink in it in the corner. And they would come around and have you fill out this thing. And so every morning, the guy would bring crackers or some kind of something, and orange juice. I put down orange juice. Wasn't really drinking much coffee then. Don't remember what Bill had. And then it would have the list of activities going on that day. I think we signed up to eat at the second serving of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so, to us it was pretty first class. We'd go in the dining room, and we were seated at a table, kind of like you'd be at a diner, with booths or like a booth or something. It seemed like there was a wall right there, and our table was there. And so each waiter was assigned to 3 tables. And so for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, he was waiting on about 12 people. And each meal was a 5-course meal. And so they never wrote anything down. They might have goofed it up a couple times during the 17 days, but not very often. So we were pretty impressed with that they could take everybody's order, remember each course all the way down, all 5 courses for 4 people. So that was a lot of fun. There were a lot of young girls on this boat, and boy, they thought Bill and I were movie stars, because you don't realize that we have an accent, because everybody around here has got the same accent, but we have an American accent, just like if you're talking to somebody from Australia or England, they have an accent. And we think that's cool, but they thought ours was cool. And so they would just about dog you around ship all the time, to the point of being obnoxious. And so I remember, I know this sounds funny, but I remember thinking to myself, now I kind of know how movie stars feel all the time. Every time they go out in public, there's all these people following them around all the time and wanting to talk to them. And, you know, after a while it gets kind of tiring. You just want to be by yourself. But anyway, I remember the drinks on, we weren't big drinkers, but the drinkers were like, hard liquor drinks were like 19 cents, and so everybody was drinking doubles for 38 cents, and some Australian guy, there'd be like 6-7 people sitting around a table, and some guy threw a 20 out there in the middle, and because they just like to talk to you, and then they talk to you for a couple hours while they were buying your drinks. And so anyway, that was kind of a social thing. Australians are kind of known for their drinking. And so one of the times, one of the mornings, which we weren't really reading the activities of what was going on, but and Bill kind of got, what happened was when we took off, we probably went to bed about, I don't know, 1 o'clock, something like that. When we were supposed to leave at 11. Well, probably midnight, 1 o'clock came. We still hadn't left. So probably about 2 o'clock, we ended up going to bed. And so we woke up the next morning, and it seemed like there was about 4-foot seas and boats rocking back and forth. And so Bill was getting a little bit seasick. And you kind of walk down the hall, kind of get what they call your sea legs, I guess. You're kind of staggering around a little bit. This one morning, about 2, maybe 3 days out, they were going to have this drill, and we didn't read the stuff on the thing that morning to know it was a drill. So when we heard the alarm go off, we thought it was for real. So I remember running down this hallway, jumping through the holes are like this with the steel in the doors, and I'm looking down this hallway, and it's like there's 4 or 5 doors, and they're all closing at once, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get stuck in here between these 2 doors, not in the door, but between the 2 doors, the watertight doors. And so we were pretty panicked, and so I got stuck right where the hallway teed into the stairway. And you know, everybody's like got their life jackets on and stuff, and there's a guy that, you know, working there, and it's like, oh, hey, what's going on? He goes, oh, it's just a practice drill. And I go, oh, okay. So I don't remember what Bill was doing at that time. I'm not sure he was feeling too good. Probably was the next morning, so he was a little bit seasick in these rough seas and stuff. So we had the so one of the fun things on that cruise ship was a couple of things. Was the food was really good, and one night we were out on the back deck, and we saw a cruise ship go by, and you know, it was probably a half a mile away, which isn't very far out in the middle of the ocean when you haven't seen land for 4 or 5 days. And it was at night and had all its lights on, and that was really pretty and kind of quiet. You know, you just kind of hear it go by, and or see it go by. And then another time was we were sitting out on the back deck, and it's just dark out there, and all of a sudden it started getting light on the horizon. You know, I was like, wow, what's that light? Anyway, it ended up being unbeknownst to us, it ended up being a full moon that came up out of the ocean. And at that point I fell in love with full moons. It was just one of those kind of memories you'll never forget. We got down around the equator, and they had this kind of ceremony, you know, you haven't been across the equator before, and Neptune, and a bunch of costumes and a parade, and they threw a bunch of people in the swimming pool and stuff like that. So it was a lot of fun. It was just kind of a ceremony thing about going across the equator was kind of a big thing. And I don't remember them doing that, going across the international date line as much, but across the equator it was a big deal. We stopped at a place called Tin Can Island, which honestly I don't know where it's at. We didn't actually pull up to the island. Well, we pulled up a half a mile, maybe even a mile away from the island, and it was some people rowed a couple canoes out, dug out canoes, and they picked up the mail. And so I had read that we were going to do that. There was a mail drop, and so I did mail a postcard or aerogram or something to my folks. It never got home, so I don't know what happened to it, but I did end up sending a card there from Tin Can Island. I remember the water being just ink blue. It's like it would look like it was thick, like ink. So then we got down to Pago Pago in the Samoan Islands, and I had read where we were going to dock in the morning in Samoa at Pago Pago, and so I decided to get up pretty early. I got up, I'm guessing probably 5 o'clock. Kind of the sun was just coming up, and we were in a bunch of islands, and so I wanted to just see that and see us come into the dock and all that kind of stuff, and so that was kind of cool. I went out and we passed 4 or 5 islands that we passed, and then we pulled into this Pago Pago, which is the world's most unique natural harbor. And so this harbor was kind of horseshoe shaped, and what happened is when the island was formed, the lava came down, it hit the water and went straight down. So a cruise ship could literally pull in and just dock like right on the road. I mean, there was like asphalt right up to where there wasn't a dock or a pier or anything like that. It just pulled right up to the land. And so that was really a fun place. We spent the day there. Probably got in there about 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. Left maybe about 6 or 7 or 8 at night. A few of us had gotten together, and there was a Japanese canning plant there. Very rustic. And this was the main island where the ships came in. If you had a boat to get out to some of these other islands, it was like it would be very remote. And so we hired this guy. I think it was $1.50 each, and we paid him to take us up and down this side of the island. The road didn't even go over to the other side of the island back then. It just went up and down one side of the island, went through the town of Pago Pago. There was a resort there. They had a gun-eyed swimming pool. I do remember they had these like little cottages on the beach, and I went in one of them and I looked, and it was just like a thatch bed with the sand floor. So pretty rustic, pretty remote. One of the interesting things was as we went up one side of the island, there was a guy in the group that was a little bit older, had gone to college, and he had a real education in like cooking and plants and stuff. So it was very interesting to just listen to him talk. When we go by different plants, he knew the names of the plants, and he knew how to cook them 3 or 4 different kinds of ways. And so that was pretty interesting. We went out the other side of the island, we got out of town a couple miles, it was like Swiss Family Robinson. I mean, I remember thinking if you had a machete out here, you could just go up in the jungle and make a thing like Swiss Family Robinson, live off the land. There's fish in there. There's big coral, colored coral, laying on the beach. It's like I sit there going, there's no way to get it home. Leave it here. They did have an airport there. They might have scheduled a flight in there once in a while. I don't know. I think it was more of an emergency thing from flights between Hawaii and New Zealand or Australia. Pago Pago is located on a line between Honolulu and Auckland, New Zealand, about 15 degrees below the equator. The airport, if you want to call it that, was like 4 palm trees with a thatch roof. I think the back had a wall on it. These 3 sides were open. There was a desk there and maybe a telephone. I don't know about that. I don't remember bathrooms being there. I don't remember running water. What was interesting was years later, when I got home, I was telling my dad about Pago Pago, and he says, I've been to Pago Pago. I'm like, what? How could you be to Pago Pago? It's out in the middle of nowhere, on the South Pacific. And so, in reading the legacy of the 90th Bombardment Group, when the pilots went down there with their planes, they would fly out of Moffett to Honolulu, and then from Honolulu they would go either to Pago Pago or Christmas Island, and then there was another place they would go, and of course each place they were refueling. And so my dad, Lee Harder, he ended up landing on Pago Pago and taking off again. And so I imagine back in the 40s that was very remote. I mean, I don't remember seeing really any houses. People just kind of lived out. I remember I went swimming in the bay, in the ocean, and it was 85, I believe it was 85 degrees, and the water was 84. And I think that's the warmest water I've ever been in. That's like bath water. But I enjoyed it. I don't swim that much, but I do remember I was out there for a while. And so we went on down to Auckland, New Zealand, and we pulled in there for a day. Got off the boat, and so we were just in Auckland, New Zealand for a day, so we're walking around, and it was like Auckland was kind of the first place we got where things started to get a little different. The traffic, you drove on the left-hand side of the road like England and Europe. The numbers on the telephones were dialed, but they were backwards. So instead of the 1 being up here, the 0 would be, and it would be 94231, like that. No standing on a sign meant no parking. You can stand there, but it meant no parking. We went up to a church for some reason, and we kind of noticed this tower on this hill. And so we go, let's go up to that tower. And I don't know if we knew much more about that than that, but maybe we had a map or something, and there was a park up there. And so we ended up walking up to that park, and there was a tower up there, kind of like Big Ben, but not as big. Like it had a clock face on all 4 sides of it. And so we got in this building downstairs, and we kept going upstairs and upstairs and upstairs, and we finally came to a point where there was a railing that went up these stairs to the inside of the clock, and this door was locked. And I don't know if we were just young, dumb, or whatever, but we just thought, oh, we got to see this, you know. So we ended up climbing up over this thing and jumping over the top and going up the staircase, and actually got into the innards of this clock. Seemed like the faces were about 25 feet apart, and there was this big gear mechanism thing that came up in the middle, and it was all, you know, steel and gears and oil and lubed, and, you know, that went out, and that made the hands go and on all four directions. And I took a picture out of each one of those things, and noticed there was even a clock down on the ground out of flowers. And so we kind of came back down through part of Auckland, and realizing that even when people walk on the sidewalk, they walk on the left-hand side of the sidewalk. So we're walking and we're just window shopping, so I'm walking up next against the windows, and pretty soon I'm looking up. It's like everybody's coming at me, and everybody over on this side of the sidewalk's going the same way I'm going. So it's like I go, oh, okay, I think everybody's supposed to walk on the left side of the sidewalk. Started doing that. The other thing that was interesting, we'd never seen before, was when you come to a traffic signal, when it was time for the pedestrians to go, they would stop all four corners of cars, and they would let all the pedestrians go any way they wanted, and catty corner. So you had pedestrians going this way, and then this way across the interchange, and they stopped all the cars, all the things for a couple minutes or whatever, and then they shut everybody down, and then the cars could go. So that was kind of interesting. And Auckland had kind of an interesting bridge. So one of the things that was going on when we got on the boat, it was about 3 more days from Auckland to Sydney. And they have people that try to hide out on the boat, jump on the boat in Auckland and get to Sydney for free. And so they were kind of, I don't know if there really was anybody, or were they just trying to say that to deter that, or what, but anyway, they seemed to be looking pretty hard for some people that had gotten on a boat. And so they were looking in all the, you know, lifeboats and stuff like that, and I don't know if they found anybody or not. I don't think they did, but anyway, we got to Sydney, and we docked right between the Sydney Bridge, pretty much right next to it, and the Opera House. They have this shell-looking thing in Sydney. It's very distinct, and it's like you see it, you know, that's Sydney. That's kind of their thing. So we ended up getting off the boat. You look back, and sometimes you wish you'd done different things, but there was a taxi cab driver that worked in Sydney, and he was on the boat. We kind of got to know him, and he invited us to come spend 2 or 3 weeks with him at his house with his wife and kids, and he would show us around Sydney. And it's like, you know, you never know what's supposed to happen or not happen, but anyway, we didn't do it, but looking back on it, we should have. I mean, a cab driver knows where everything's at. It really makes a difference when you're traveling if you know somebody that lives there. You're not spending a lot of time trying to figure out what to see and what's important and what's not important. And when you're traveling, you're pretty much lost all the time. There's a lot of walking involved. So anyway, that's part of the cruise ship part. So I think I'm going to take a break here, and we'll see what's going on.